Ladies and gentlemen, we are born into a world that constantly asks us to compare. From a young age, we're shown charts, ranks, scores, and scales. We are praised when we meet the benchmarks of others, and gently, or not so gently, nudged when we fall behind. Somewhere along the way, we begin to believe that our worth is determined not by our uniqueness, but by how closely we mirror someone else's version of success. And in trying to become like others, we lose the precious essence of who we truly are. But the truth is, no one else can walk your path, no one else can feel your pain the way you feel it, and no one else can carry your purpose because your journey is uniquely yours. There is no fairness in comparing two lives that were never meant to follow the same map. You were not born to live someone else's dream. You were not placed here to compete in a race that was never yours to begin with. Every single chapter of your story matters, the slow beginnings, the silent growth, the unseen progress, the quiet healing. But when you measure your timeline against someone else's highlight reel, you blind yourself to the beauty unfolding within your own process. What looks like delay in your story might actually be divine timing. What looks like failure might be the foundation of something more meaningful than you could ever imagine. We compare because we are taught to value visibility over authenticity. We think that if someone is ahead of us, they must be doing better, living better, winning. But sometimes the loudest successes come from the most fragile places. Sometimes what shines the brightest has the darkest roots, and what you see on the surface is just that surface. You don't know what battles they're fighting behind the smiles. You don't know the cost of their achievement. You don't know what they had to lose to get what they now flaunt. When you compare, you reduce your life to an illusion. You overlook your own blessings, your own growth, your own quiet wins, all in pursuit of something that was never meant to be yours in the first place. The truth is, life is not a race. It is a deeply personal experience. We are all given different mountains to climb and different storms to survive. Some of us are called to learn patience, others strength. Some are given early success and later challenges, while others walk through hardship for years before seeing even a glimpse of light. But none of these paths are wrong. None are better than the other. Each is just different, designed by time and experience to bring out something powerful within us. So, to compare journeys is to deny the wisdom of your own path. It is to say, I don't trust the way my story is unfolding, when in fact every page is being written with purpose, even the ones that don't make sense yet. Your value doesn't decrease because someone else is shining. Your worth isn't questioned just because someone else reached a goal faster than you. The flowers don't compete with one another. They bloom in their own time, in their own way, and each of them is beautiful. So are you. You were not made to be a replica. You were made to be rare. Your struggles, your resilience, your voice, your gifts, they all come together to create a story that no one else can live. So instead of asking, why am I not like them? Try asking, what can I become if I trust who I already am? It is a quiet form of courage to stay in your lane when everything around you tries to pull you into competition. It takes strength to believe in your timing when everyone else seems to be moving faster. But what if going slower is exactly what you need? What if your pace is not weakness but wisdom? What if your setbacks are not punishments but preparation? When you stop comparing, you start living. You begin to see your life not as a series of losses, but as a beautiful unfolding. You start appreciating your lessons, your depth, your emotional scars, because they all contribute to the person you're becoming. We often forget that some of the most extraordinary people in history didn't follow the crowd. They stood out, they stumbled, they started over, they were misunderstood. They didn't take the path everyone else was on. They made a new one, and the same is possible for you. But you have to be willing to release the need to fit into someone else's mold. You have to be brave enough to say, this is my journey, and I honor it, even if no one else understands it. That is where real freedom begins, not in approval, not in imitation, but in self-acceptance. Every time you choose to trust your path, you build a stronger relationship with yourself. You begin to realize that you're not behind. You're just on your own timeline. You're not missing out. You're being prepared. And everything you think you lack may already be growing within you. But you have to give it space. You have to stop crowding your mind with the noise of comparison long enough to hear your own truth. Because your truth, no matter how quiet it is right now, is still powerful, and it deserves to be heard. In a world that constantly tries to make you feel like you're not enough, choosing to value your own journey is a radical act. It is a rebellion against the pressure to conform. It is a declaration that your story matters, even if it doesn't look like anyone else's, and that is what will set you apart, not how well you mimic others, but how deeply you live your own truth. Every soul is born with a purpose. Every life unfolds with a rhythm that cannot be rushed. You don't have to figure everything out today. You don't need to reach the finish line tomorrow. What you need is faith in your process, in your progress, and in your power. You need patience to let things bloom in their season. You need compassion to honor where you are without shame. And most of all, you need the courage to believe that your life, exactly as it is right now, is not behind. It is not broken. It is not small. It is yours, and that alone makes it worthy. There is a quiet destruction that happens within us every time we compare ourselves to someone else. It's not loud, it doesn't scream, and it doesn't announce itself with thunder. It's subtle. It slips into our thoughts unnoticed, often disguised as ambition or self-improvement. But before we know it, we find ourselves trapped in the weight of inadequacy, questioning everything we are just because someone else appears to be something we are not. Comparison is not just a habit, it's a thief, and what it steals most ruthlessly is our self-worth. When we compare ourselves to others, we stop seeing ourselves clearly. Our reflection becomes distorted, not because we are not beautiful or capable, but because we are trying to see ourselves through the lens of another life. We look at someone else's achievements, relationships, lifestyle, or appearance, and somewhere deep inside, we whisper to ourselves, "Maybe I'm not enough." That whisper, repeated often enough, becomes a belief. And that belief begins to shape how we walk, how we speak, how we dream, or worse, how we stop dreaming altogether. It's heartbreaking how often we measure our value by someone else's success. We see their confidence and immediately question our own. We see their smile and wonder why we don't feel as happy. We see their talents and begin to believe ours are meaningless. And slowly, without realizing it, we begin to shrink. Not because we lack anything, but because we've allowed someone else's journey to become the standard by which we judge our own existence. But the truth is, no one can diminish your worth unless you hand them the power to do so. We often forget that every person is fighting a battle we don't see. The polished images, the curated success, the filtered joy, those are just fragments. They don't tell the whole story. The person you're comparing yourself to might be carrying invisible scars, just like you. They may have cried themselves to sleep last night. They may be overwhelmed by pressure, expectations, or fear. But when we look at them from the outside, all we see is perfection. And when we compare our raw, unedited reality to someone else's highlight reel, we are always going to feel like we're falling short. Comparison makes you forget the things you once prayed for. It blinds you to how far you've come. It convinces you that your efforts are meaningless simply because someone else appears to be doing more, faster, or better. But progress is not always loud. Growth is not always visible. Healing doesn't post updates. Sometimes just surviving the day is a victory, and that deserves to be honored, not dismissed. When you compare, you invalidate your strength. You overlook your own resilience. You forget that your story has weight, meaning, and depth, even if it doesn't look like anyone else's. It is painful to lose faith in yourself, and that's what comparison does. It strips you of your confidence piece by piece. It plants seeds of doubt in your mind and waters them with fear, and the worst part is, it doesn't stop when you achieve more. Because even when you reach new heights, there will always be someone seemingly higher. The game never ends, and the only way to win is to stop playing, to stop chasing a version of success that was never yours to begin with. To stop trying to fit into someone else's shape and finally embrace your own. You are not falling behind. You are not broken. You are not a failure. You are becoming. You are evolving. You are living a life that no one else could live with your heart, your soul, your experiences. But when you compare, you dishonor all of that. You place your worth in someone else's hands, and no one, no matter how perfect they appear, deserves to define your value. That is a job that belongs to you and you alone. Instead of comparing, learn to celebrate. When you see someone doing well, let that inspire you, not diminish you. Their success doesn't mean your failure. There is room for all of us to thrive. Life is not a competition. It is a collaboration of souls learning, growing, and rising together. So lift others without lowering yourself. Admire without envy. Observe without judgment. And most importantly, honor yourself with the same kindness and encouragement you offer others. It's okay to feel insecure sometimes. It's okay to wish you were further along, but don't let those feelings convince you that you are unworthy. You are not behind. You are simply on your own path, a path that may not make sense to others, but is meant for you. A path that will take you where you're meant to go, if only you trust the process. But that trust can only come when you stop measuring your steps against someone else's journey. Remember that your self-worth is not a scoreboard. It is not something that fluctuates based on what others achieve. It is constant, it is steady, it is yours, and it cannot be taken away unless you give it up. So take back your power, reclaim your narrative. Look in the mirror and see not just who you are now, but everything you've overcome to be here. That is strength. That is beauty. That is worth. Let today be the day you stop chasing perfection and start embracing authenticity. Let it be the day you replace comparison with compassion, for yourself, for your story, for your path. You are more than enough just as you are, not because you are better than someone else, not because you've accomplished more, but because you are real, you are human, you are growing, and that is always enough. So often, we convince ourselves that we are only worthy of joy once we've reached some grand destination. A perfect job, the ideal relationship, the flawless body, the ultimate version of ourselves that we imagine living somewhere in the future. Until we arrive at that imagined point, we silence our happiness, we hold back our pride, and we keep telling ourselves, not yet. I'll celebrate later. But what we forget is that life is not made of destinations. It is made of steps, small steps, silent steps, backward steps, sideways steps, and every single one of those moments is worth acknowledging. Every bit of progress, no matter how tiny, is a miracle. It deserves to be seen. We live in a world obsessed with perfection. We are constantly shown images of flawless lives, perfect bodies, immaculate homes, people who always seem to have it together. And without realizing it, we start setting impossible standards for ourselves. We begin to think that unless we are extraordinary, we are nothing, that unless our work is celebrated by the world, it's not valuable, that unless we are entirely healed, we are not worthy of love. But perfection is not only unrealistic, it is paralyzing. It traps us in fear, telling us that if we can't do it perfectly, we shouldn't do it at all, and so we wait. We wait for the perfect moment, the perfect plan, the perfect self. And in the waiting, life slips by. But the truth is, progress is more powerful than perfection will ever be, because progress is real. It's messy, it's human, and it's honest. It happens in quiet moments when no one is watching. It happens in the courage it takes to show up when you feel broken. It happens in the choice to try again after failing. It happens in the whispers of self-compassion you give yourself on the days you feel lost. These are not grand, viral moments. They won't earn you applause or awards, but they are the building blocks of a life fully lived. There is beauty in progress that perfection could never offer. Progress reminds you of your resilience. It shows you how far you've come, even when the destination is still out of sight. It humbles you because it demands patience and persistence. It empowers you because it proves that even small steps add up over time. But when you are blinded by the illusion of perfection, you overlook these sacred victories. You dismiss the days you got out of bed when it was hard. You ignore the healing you've done silently. You minimize the boundaries you've set, the forgiveness you've offered, the habits you've broken. You tell yourself it's not enough. But what if it is? What if every inch forward matters just as much as a mile? We must learn to honor our becoming. We must give ourselves permission to be proud of unfinished things. Your story doesn't need to be tied up in a neat little bow to be worthy of celebration. Your progress doesn't need to look like someone else's success to be meaningful. Growth is not linear. Healing is not a checklist. Becoming takes time and it takes heart. And every single moment you choose to keep going, even when it's hard, even when you're scared, that is worth celebrating. Perfection is a mask. It demands that you hide your flaws, conceal your mistakes, and pretend you have it all figured out. But progress is a mirror. It asks you to look at yourself honestly and say, I'm not there yet, but I'm trying. And there is so much strength in trying. There is so much courage in continuing to move even when the path is uncertain. The most beautiful lives are not the ones that look perfect on the outside. They are the ones built with quiet determination, with effort, with mistakes, with grace. You were never meant to be perfect. You were meant to grow. You were meant to stretch, to stumble, to evolve. You were meant to fall in love with the journey, not just the outcome. And when you allow yourself to celebrate your progress, you begin to fall in love with who you are becoming. Not the polished version, not the finished product, but the raw, real, rising you that is still in process. The you that is learning to breathe again after heartbreak. The you that is finding your voice after years of silence. The you that is slowly remembering your worth after forgetting it for too long. There is so much pressure to be perfect that we forget what it feels like to be human. But humanity is not weakness. It is the root of all connection, all empathy, all depth. When you celebrate progress, you are choosing to honor your humanity. You are saying, even in my imperfection, I am enough. Even in my mess, I am worthy. And that kind of self-love changes everything. It liberates you from the lie that you must earn your value. It reminds you that your existence alone is already significant. Sometimes we're afraid to celebrate progress because we fear it makes us look arrogant. Or we think we'll jinx the good that is happening, but joy is not arrogance. Pride in growth is not selfish. You are allowed to be proud of yourself. You are allowed to smile at how far you've come. You are allowed to dance in the middle of the storm, not because the storm is over, but because you are still here, still fighting, still rising. You will never feel whole if you keep postponing your joy. You will always feel behind if you only measure yourself by perfection. But when you begin to notice and appreciate the small victories, the mornings you didn't give up, the conversations where you spoke your truth, the days you rested because your soul needed it, you begin to build a life rooted in grace. And that is a life worth living. Celebrate progress, not because you've arrived, but because you're moving. Not because everything is fixed, but because you are trying. Not because you're the best, but because you are being your best self today, in this moment. And that is more than enough. There is something deeply freeing about realizing that the only person you truly need to compete with is the version of yourself you were yesterday. The world has taught us to constantly look around, to compare, to measure, to race. We are told that we must beat others, outshine them, prove ourselves in front of them. But in doing so, we lose sight of the only race that actually matters, the one we are running within ourselves. It is not about being better than someone else. It is about being better than you used to be, growing stronger, kinder, wiser, more grounded, not because the world demands it, but because your soul desires it. When you begin to see yourself as your only competition, everything changes. You stop trying to fit into molds that weren't made for you. You stop craving validation from people who don't understand your journey. You stop exhausting yourself trying to meet standards that were never meant for your life. Instead, you start tuning in. You start listening to your inner voice, the one that says, I can do better today than I did yesterday. Not for applause, not for approval, but for peace, for joy, for growth that is rooted in authenticity. The world will always try to pit you against others. It will show you people who are younger, more successful, more beautiful, more accomplished. And it will whisper to you that you are behind, that you are lacking, that you are not enough. But that whisper is a lie, because no one else is living your life. No one else has your scars, your dreams, your pain, your power. No one else has walked through the exact fire you've survived. You are not on the same path as anyone else, so why compare destinations? You have your own mountains to climb and your own stars to chase. When you compete with yourself, you give yourself permission to grow at your own pace. Some days, that growth will look like success, achievements, progress, breakthroughs. Other days, that growth will look like rest, silence, falling apart so you can come back together stronger. Either way, it counts. Either way, you are becoming. There is no need to rush, no need to catch up to anyone. You are not late, you are not early, you are exactly where you are meant to be. Being your own competition also teaches you compassion, because you begin to see your flaws not as failures, but as opportunities. You begin to look at your mistakes not with shame, but with curiosity. What can I learn from this? How can I grow through this? You stop punishing yourself for being imperfect and start celebrating the courage it takes to keep going, to keep trying, to keep evolving even when it's hard. You become your own teammate, not your worst critic. It's a powerful thing to choose to grow from love instead of fear. Fear says, if I don't improve, I won't be enough. But love says, I am enough, and I want to grow because I deserve the best version of this life. That shift in perspective changes everything. You stop chasing worthiness and start realizing that your worth is already within you. You don't need to earn it. You just need to live it, to nurture it, to rise into it a little more each day. There will be people ahead of you, and there will be people behind you. But neither matters if your focus is on your own growth. You don't need to look sideways. You don't need to measure your life by someone else's timeline. Your only job is to become the best version of you, not a copy of someone else, not a reflection of society's expectations, but a fuller, freer, more fearless version of who you already are deep down. Think of how far you've come. Think of the challenges you've faced, the fears you've confronted, the heartbreaks you've healed from, the days you wanted to quit but didn't. That's your real competition, not someone else's highlight reel, not someone else's perfect post, but the you that once thought you wouldn't make it and still did. That's the person you are here to surpass. That's the standard you're rising above. That's your mirror, your rival, and your greatest teacher. Being your own competition also means celebrating your progress, even when it's invisible to others. Maybe no one saw how hard it was for you to get out of bed this morning. Maybe no one knows how much strength it took to speak your truth, to set that boundary, to take that first step, but you know. And that's enough. You don't need a stage to honor your courage. You don't need permission to be proud. You get to look at yourself in the mirror and say, I'm not where I want to be yet, but I'm getting closer every day. You're not here to outdo anyone. You're here to outgrow your fears, to outshine your doubts, to overcome your past. You're here to write a story that feels true to you, not one that impresses others. When you understand that, your energy shifts. You no longer feel the need to rush, to compete, to prove. You find peace in progress. You find joy in the journey, and you learn to cheer for yourself the way you would for a friend. Gently, honestly, and without conditions. Life becomes so much more meaningful when you stop asking, am I as good as them? And start asking, am I becoming a better version of myself? Because that's what matters. That's what lasts. The outside world may never fully see your growth, but you will feel it. In your confidence, in your peace, in the quiet strength that comes from knowing that you're doing your best. Not someone else's best. Yours. You don't need to be anyone else. You just need to be the person you were born to become. And that person is already within you, waiting to be uncovered, nurtured, and honored. Every step you take toward that version of yourself, no matter how small, is a victory. You are your only competition, and that is not a burden, It's a beautiful opportunity to rewrite your story, to rise from your own ashes, to be your own hero every single day.